Welcome back, everyone. Here we are with the review for issue 96. Let's go ahead and get started. Republic Stealth Ship. The precise timeline for the development of the Republic Stealth Ship is unknown, largely due to the secrecy that surrounded the project, the chaos of the conflict for which it was commissioned, and the loss of records, both deliberate and accidental, following the transition from Republic to Empire. What is known for certain is that the vessel was tested in the field for the first time during the rebels' campaign to break the separatist blockade of the planet Christophsis in what was one of the earliest large-scale engagements of the Clone Wars. Obviously, you can see what this looks like. It's a very long, sleek ship, for sure. Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the engineering miracle again. Cloaking devices were known of in the galaxy, but were limited to large capital ships capable of outputting the enormous power needed to operate them. Most ran on impossibly rare stygium crystals, which were themselves the reason why the devices were so rare. When, in the first year of the Clone Wars, Sanar design systems were able to miniaturize cloaking technology sufficiently to create the prototype stealth ship, it was declared an engineering miracle. Of course, what no one in the Republic knew at the time was that a smaller cloaking system had been built years before and installed aboard Darth Maul's vessel, the Scimitar, or it could be Scimitar, however you would want to pronounce it. Handled with care, measuring just shy of 100 meters in length, the stealth ship was classed as a corvette. However, it was only very lightly armed and shielded, and never intended for out-and-out combat. Instead, the vessel was designed primarily for intelligence gathering and for dropping clone covert ops teams into sensitive areas behind enemy lines. Apart from anything, the amount of power required to operate the cloaking system, derived from precious stygium crystals, meant that only by switching it off could the two laser turrets be powered up sufficiently and 4 torpedo launcher tubes be used with any accuracy. Resembling a long, thin spike, the stealth ship's narrow main hull was dotted with gold-colored nodules. These were the cloaking field projectors, though the bulk of the related tech was kept in the pointed prow of the ship. The relatively small cockpit was there too, manned by a pilot and co-pilot. This was reached from the main crew area by a dual staircase, split down the middle by banks of computer consoles. Despite its length, space was at a premium aboard the ship, with computer displays and consoles covering every interior surface. The only additional bulkhead kept the crew section separate from the engines and reactor at the rear. At that point, the access corridors to either side of it, a ladder led up and down to the point defense laser turrets. The boarding ramp was midships. Around the entrance were acceleration seats for soldiers being taken into battle, with storage areas between those for cargo. At the rear, just forward of the engine block and sandwiched between the two sensor rectenna, 2 ventral, 1 dorsal, were the crew stations that monitored and controlled all ship's functions. All comm systems aboard the ship, including those between the crew, were given additional shielding to prevent as much electromagnetic radiation from escaping as possible, as this could be picked up by an enemy ship's scanners. The performance of the prototype in breaking the separatist blockade of Christophsis was satisfactory enough, but it did not go unnoticed that the weakness of the vessel in combat would have been more gravely exposed were it not for the skills of pilot and mission commander Anakin Skywalker. In the end, partly because of the inconclusive test flight results, but also the difficulty and cost of locating enough stygium crystals to create more stealth cloaking systems, the prototype used in the Clone Wars remained the only one of its kind It was not seen again after the Battle of Christophsis. So I wanted to show the golden nodules. You can see those there. There's quite a few along the rear. Um, so that's what they look like. The carrion spike. 2 years after the end of the Clone Wars, however, the naval curio was comprehensively refitted and gifted to former Republic Admiral Wilhuff Tarkin, now an Imperial Moff. He gave the ship its first ever name, the Carrion Spike, remodeled to measure almost 150 meters long. The principal difference between the ships was that the Carrion Spike was very heavily armed, and unfortunately for Tarkin, the vessel was stolen from him and used against the Empire and then badly damaged. The incident was a cause of great ignominy for Tarkin and saw the stealth ship fade once more into the background. It would be over 40 years until the ship was in use again, when it became the personal vessel of Agent Terex of the First Order Security Bureau. Breaking the blockade. So this was in Rebels, just so you know. So you can see there, it's Anakin and Obi-Wan there talking in Rebels. Not Rebels, sorry, Clone Wars. The combat field test of the prototype stealth ship came during the siege of Christophsis. The blockade of the planet by the Separatist commander Admiral Trench was proving impenetrable, trapping a Republic relief mission led by Senator Bail Organa. Repeated attempts to break the blockade by Jedi General Anakin Skywalker were repulsed with heavy casualties. Obi-Wan Kenobi brought the stealth ship to Christophsis aboard a Venator-class Star Destroyer, the prototype having no hyperspace capability. Anakin was tasked with taking relief supplies down to Senator Organa, but instead chose to challenge Trench directly. The Separatist admiral had faced larger stealth vessels before, and had tracked and destroyed them using torpedoes that locked onto the magnetic signature of the cloaked ship. Anakin took advantage of this, knowing Trench would have to drop his unique thermal shields to fire. He let Trench open fire on the stealth ship, then drew the tracking torpedoes back into the admiral's own ship. Trench was taken out of action, and the blockade was broken. So when that happened, they actually thought they had killed Trench, just to come to find out he had survived. A submarine thriller. The Clone Wars episode in which the Republic stealth ship appears is a tribute to the World War II submarine thriller genre, which included famous titles such as Run Silent, Run Deep, and We Dive at Dawn. We Dive at Dawn! Particularly the tense scene in which the crew turn off all non-essential systems to allow their ship to drift silently as Separatist Hyena bombers fly past. Pretty cool. Ooh, now we're going to get into something really kind of spooky. Ooh. This would have been great around Halloween. Malachor, the Sith Temple World. So if you watched Rebels, you would have seen Malachor. So let's go ahead and get started. Malachor is a planet shrouded in mystery and is believed to have been desolate for thousands of years. The approach from space takes the traveler past dead moons to a slate gray world. Even once they pass beneath the perpetually thick clouds, there is little more to savor. The planet's terrain is rocky and unforgiving, littered with craters and challenging to traverse on foot. Some of the larger craters are perilous, and great care is needed when navigating the planet's surface for fear of falling underground. Whilst the air is breathable, it is stale and pungent. It was in the depths of one of Malachor's largest craters that the planet's darkest secret once lay. To this day, monolithic spires covered with glyphs from some long-dead language project out of the crater, hinting at what formerly stood below, an ancient temple built by the Sith as they sought to establish their presence on the planet. The temple, which stood for thousands of years until its destruction during the early stages of the Galactic Civil War. This was used as a place of worship and learning, but it also contained a deadly superweapon that lay at the very heart of the structure. This weapon, rumored to be of unimaginable strength and activated by a Sith holocron that doubled as an archive of knowledge. Let's talk about the ancient blade. Ezra Bridger found several damaged variants weapons of a design he had never seen before uh, during his exploration of the Sith Temple in Malachor with his master Kanan Jarrus and former Jedi Ahsoka Tano. Few, it turned out, would see this type of weapon, the distinctive crossguard lightsaber, again afterwards for a long time. Almost 40 years when a red-bladed crossguard weapon was used by Kylo Ren. Sometimes the wording is just a little bit weird, commas in weird places and stuff. Probably because it's written by the British. You guys really know how to mess up an English language. Holy cow. Just kidding. At some distant time in the past, the Sith Temple was the site of a horrific underground battle remembered as the Scourge of Malachor. In an attempt to prevent the superweapon from ever being used against the galaxy, the Jedi launched an all-out assault on the temple. But the battle that ensued would end in disaster when the weapon malfunctioned and detonated, leaving all in the vicinity instantly turned to stone and smashed to rubble. The battlefield was littered with fallen warriors, their weapons scattered. It was after the Scourge that the Jedi Order declared Malachor off limits to all Jedi, and the stories of the events that took place there soon became tangled with myth and legend. After its millennia-long dereliction, crossing the surface of the crater where the Scourge of Malachor occurred was treacherous, as the scorched ground could fall away beneath one's feet without warning. In the very center of this space, surrounded by the pillared ruins of what may have once been a city, towered their pyramidal ziggurat, the only structure in the crater left fully intact. The temple structure rose up some 6 levels, 5 in dark gray slate, with the final one supporting a blood-red pyramid, the super weapon activation point. Though dust and dirt covered them, glowing red veined pathways led to triangular doors at the base of the structure, which could only be opened by a force wielder. They were there to test those who sought access, tests that would destroy those who failed. It was the Sith way. In the very heart of the temple was a Sith holocron on a platform that floated high above the ground. Removing it began the activation cycle for the super weapon. Doing so raised the holocron platform into a power node before the holocron itself became the key, allowing the access to the rest of the temple and, more importantly, the activation chamber for the weapon. All the while, the temple and surrounding structures were aglow with scarlet energy. The topmost pyramid stood open and ready. The chamber at the top of the pyramid, lit with lines of sickly white power, had at its center a hovering obelisk of dark stone shot through with red lines and symbols. Placing the holocron inside it, using the force rather than a hand, caused the holocron to question the purpose and desires of the user. During this examination, the weapon began charging, sending out a blinding beam of energy. Lightning arced around the obelisk within, while the weapon requested targets from its user. The female voice of the interface was an echo of eons past, the voice of the individual who had once commanded the temple weapon. Malachor revisited. In the very early years of the Rebel Alliance, a small rebel cell led by Jedi Master Kanan Jarrus his apprentice Ezra Bridger, and former Jedi and Rebel commander Ahsoka Tano took a trip to Malachor on the advice of Jedi Master Yoda. Yoda told Ezra that if the rebels were to fight and defeat the Sith Lord Darth Vader and the Inquisitors he controlled, then they must find Malachor. Ezra explained this to Jarrus and Tano revealed that Malachor was not a person, but a planet. Soon after landing on the planet's surface, Ezra activated one of the temple's pillars and fell through the ground to a lower level, while Kanan and Ahsoka continued on. Once underground, the Bridger encountered the former Sith Lord Darth Maul. Maul also wanted to defeat the Sith after having been manipulated by them once too often. He sensed a weakness in Ezra and the possibility of turning him to the dark side. Working together, the two of them were able to enter the Sith temple, retrieve the Sith holocron held within it, and activate the ancient superweapon. On releasing what he'd on realizing what he'd done, and after Maul had fled, Ezra Bridger and Kanan Jarrus were able to deactivate the superweapon, leading to the destruction of the temple, leaving Ahsoka Tano to fight Vader. The pair fled back to their base. Darth Vader survived through though the fate of Ahsoka remained uncertain to the rebels. So the fact that Ahsoka was Anakin's Padawan and she did not know that it was Vader had to fight him. So that was an interesting fight. And again, that was in Rebels. That was a good show. So that was everything for issue 96. We did a lot of, got started on the detail work for the rear engine section, so that's exciting. I'm guessing that we're going to continue that next time in issue 97. We've got some more piping and stuff like that to put on the engine area. We've also got some more of the landing leg stuff, 3 more of the vents for the engine area, so we'll see what we're going to do in issue 97. With that, I want to thank you all for watching, and may the Force be with you always.